The frozen silence of the Sevastopol outskirts is broken only by the wind. It is October 1942. A lone figure lies concealed in a rocky crevice, her Mosin-Nagant 91 30th sniper rifle a cold extension of her will. She is Senior Sergeant Lyudmila Pavlichenko of the Red Army's 25th Shapayev Rifle Division. With 187 confirmed kills to her name already, she is both a celebrated heroine and a prime target. On this day, her hunt has taken her deep into no man's land. Her mission, to stall a German advance scouting party. But now, she faces a sniper's ultimate nightmare. A careful check of her pouch confirms it. Her last cartridge is chambered. One round remains. Behind her, the route back to Soviet lines is open ground, covered by German machine gun nests. Ahead, the cautious footsteps of an enemy patrol crunch in the snow. She is trapped, isolated, and virtually disarmed. In this moment of desperation, a plan forms a gambit so audacious, so psychologically ruthless, it would defy all conventional warfare doctrine. When one female sniper ran out of ammo, this insane decoy trick would kill 12 men. To understand the sheer desperation of Lyudmila Pavlichenko's situation, we must first understand the woman and the brutal theater of war in which she fought. By the autumn of 1942, the siege of Sevastopol had entered its most agonizing phase. The strategic port city on the Crimean Peninsula had been under relentless Axis assault for nearly 8 months. The Luftwaffe had poured thousands of tons of high-explosive bombs onto its defenses, and the German 11th Army, under the determined command of General Erich von Manstein, was tightening the vice. Lyudmila herself was no ordinary soldier. A history student at Kiev University before the German invasion in June 1941, she had volunteered immediately. Rejecting roles as a nurse, she insisted on joining the infantry. After proving herself at the sniper school, she was assigned to the 25th Shapayev Division, a unit with a storied reputation from the Russian Civil War. Her first kills, 2 Romanian soldiers near Belyayevka, were a grim introduction to her new reality. But she adapted with chilling efficiency. On the bloody battlefields of Odessa and later Sevastopol, her tally grew with terrifying speed. She developed a sniper's cold calculus, patience, precision, and an intimate understanding of terrain. But the Germans adapted too. They learned to fear the specific threat of Soviet snipers, and particularly the one they called Lady Death. Counter-sniper teams, often consisting of seasoned veterans from the Gebirgsjäger or mountain troops, were deployed with explicit orders to neutralize her. They studied her patterns, her favored positions, her methods. The battlefield around Sevastopol became a deadly chessboard of observation posts, hidden firing lanes, and sudden, violent death. For Pavlichenko, every mission now carried an added layer of peril. She was not just hunting, she was being hunted. The pressure was immense, the strain psychological as well as physical. And on this October day, that pressure would reach its breaking point. The mission began like dozens before. Under cover of pre-dawn darkness, Pavlichenko, accompanied by her spotter and fellow sniper, Junior Sergeant Leonid Kutsenko, infiltrated a forward position. Their objective was a rocky hillock overlooking a shallow valley, a known infiltration route for German patrols probing the Soviet perimeter. The position was good, offering a commanding view but also featuring natural rock formations that provided concealment and multiple escape routes. Or so it seemed. For the first few hours, the morning was quiet. The mist clung to the ground, limiting visibility. By 0900 hours, the sun had burned it away, revealing a stark, snow-dusted landscape. Kutsenko, peering through his binoculars, was the first to see movement. A group of 8 German soldiers, moving with the cautious professionalism of a reconnaissance unit, was picking its way up the opposite slope. They were approximately 400 meters out, a manageable range for a sniper of Pavlichenko's skill. She took the first shot. The crack of the Mosin-Nagant echoed across the valley. One German crumpled. The patrol scattered, diving for cover behind rocks and into a shallow depression. A tense silence descended. For 30 minutes, nothing moved. Then, a helmet, barely visible, peered over a rock. It was a test. Pavlichenko didn't bite. She knew the trick. Finally, believing the sniper had withdrawn, a soldier made a dash for a better position. Her second shot stopped him mid-stride. Now the patrol was pinned, and they knew a sniper had them zeroed. By 1100 hours, the situation evolved. The initial patrol had radioed for help. Through her scoped sight, Pavlichenko observed new figures maneuvering on the far tree line. This was no longer just a reconnaissance team, it was becoming a counter-sniper operation. She identified the distinctive profile of a Mauser Kar 98K with a ZF-39 sniper scope. The enemy had brought their own shooter. A deadly duel began. Shots were exchanged, each sniper trying to draw fire or reveal the other's position. Kutsenko, acting as observer, whispered corrections and warnings. Movement, left of the large boulder, 200 meters, he's searching. Then, disaster struck. A well-aimed German mortar round, likely called in by the pinned patrol, slammed into the rocks 20 meters to their right. The concussion was deafening. Shrapnel and stone fragments whistled through the air. In the chaotic aftermath, Kutsenko let out a sharp gasp. A jagged piece of rock had sliced into his thigh, severing an artery. Pavlichenko crawled to him, applying a field dressing, but the blood flow was severe. He needed immediate evacuation. The primary escape route, a gully leading back to Soviet lines, was now under direct observation from the newly arrived German elements. They were watching, waiting for her to break cover. With immense difficulty, and under covering fire from a nearby Soviet machine gun nest that had been alerted by the mortar blast, Pavlichenko managed to drag the semi-conscious Kutsenko down a secondary path to a waiting medic. But this path was a one-way trip. She could not return to her original sniper's nest. Instead, she found a new, isolated position in a cluster of boulders further to the east. It was a compromised spot with only one viable line of sight and, crucially, no easy path back to safety. She was now alone and advanced. And as she settled in, she made a stomach-dropping realization. In the frantic effort to save Kutsenko, her ammunition pouch had been torn open. A quick, frantic inventory confirmed her fear. She had one single, solitary round left in her rifle. The spare stripper clips were gone, lost in the scramble. She was stranded, with the German noose tightening, armed with a single bullet. The full weight of her predicament settled upon her with the force of a physical blow. The initial German patrol, though reduced, was still present and now reinforced. She estimated at least a squad-sized element, 12 to 15 men, was actively coordinating her encirclement. Their own sniper was a constant, unseen threat. Worse, the distinct rat-tat-tat of an MG-34 machine gun being set up reached her ears. They were emplacing a support weapon to lock down the area. The sun was beginning its afternoon descent, casting long, stark shadows. If she remained until nightfall, the cold would become a lethal enemy. Her greatcoat was insufficient for a frozen Crimean night in the open. If she tried to move, the machine gun and the enemy sniper would cut her down. She scanned her surroundings with a desperate intensity. Her position was a shallow, rocky scrape facing the German line. To her back was a gentle slope of open, snow-covered ground for nearly 300 meters before it dipped into a ravine that led toward friendly lines. It was a killing field. Her mind raced through the options, each more hopeless than the last. Charge and hope to overrun a machine gun nest with a bayonet and one round. Suicide. Attempt a slow, crawling retreat across the open snow. She would be a slow-moving target against the white backdrop. Stay put and hope for a Soviet counter-patrol. Unlikely, and the Germans would find her first, then, her training and her unique psychological insight intersected. She remembered lectures on enemy psychology. She recalled stories from the defense of Odessa about German soldiers' reactions to specific stimuli. They were disciplined, yes, but were not immune to curiosity, to frustration, and to the raw, predatory instinct triggered by a seemingly helpless target. An idea, born of sheer desperation and cunning, began to form. It was a theatrical performance where the stage was a battlefield, the props were her own gear, and the price of a poor review was death. Her plan required perfect timing, an understanding of human nature, and a complete suppression of her own survival instinct. It meant making herself the bait. She would offer the Germans what they wanted most, a clear, easy shot at the infamous Soviet sniper. But it would not be her in the crosshairs. Using her only remaining resources, her helmet, her padded Ushanka hat, her rifle, and her own steady nerve, she began to construct a macabre puppet show. She carefully placed her helmet atop a sturdy, forked stick, just above the lip of her rocky cover. She then positioned her Ushanka inside it, giving it a vague, head-like shape. She then, with painstaking slowness, inched her precious Mosin-Nagant up beside the head, resting the barrel on a stone so the muzzle and a portion of the forestock were visible. From a distance of 200 meters, it would create a perfect, if stationary, silhouette of a sniper peering over the rocks. The insanity of the act was not lost on her. She was deliberately drawing the focused fire of a dozen professional soldiers and a dedicated enemy sniper onto her own position, while she herself would be completely exposed just feet away from this decoy. One stray round, one piece of fragmentation, and it would be over. She took a deep, steadying breath, the cold air biting her lungs. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. With her decoy in place, she grasped her rifle's trigger guard, the cold metal against her finger. She had one bullet. She would get one chance. The stage was set. Now, she needed to direct the actors. She needed the Germans to see the decoy. Carefully, she used a small piece of broken mirror from her medical kit, a tool for signaling to catch the afternoon sun. She flashed it briefly, just a glint, off the barrel of her propped-up rifle. Then she waited. Seconds ticked by like hours. Then, a reaction. A single shot rang out from the German lines. It was a sniper's round. It struck the rock face just inches above her helmet with a sharp spang, sending rock chips flying. They had taken the bait. They had seen the sniper. But one shot wasn't enough. She needed a frenzy. She needed them to commit, to believe they had her trapped and were finishing the job. She moved the stick holding the helmet, just a slight, trembling jiggle, mimicking a soldier shifting position under fire. It was the subtlest of movements. It worked. What happened next was a storm of steel. The German machine gunner, seeing movement, opened up with a long, tearing burst. The MG-34's distinctive sound filled the valley as 7.92 mm rounds chewed into the rocks around her decoy, shredding the helmet, snapping the stick, and sending the Ushanka flying. Simultaneously, the rest of the German squad, believing the Soviet sniper was pinned and possibly wounded, rose from their cover to pour rifle fire into the position. They were exposed, just for a few seconds, but it was the window Pavlichenko had manufactured with her own death. While the torrent of enemy fire was focused exclusively on the decoy, Pavlichenko, who had flattened herself into a shallow depression just to the left of the spectacle, now moved. This was the crucible of the trick. Amidst the deafening roar of the MG-34 and the crack of numerous rifles, she calmly, precisely, rose into a low crouch. The Germans were not looking at her. Their eyes, their scopes, their gun barrels were all fixed on the destroyed decoy, believing they were witnessing their victory. She brought her rifle to her shoulder. The world narrowed to her scope's field of view. She picked her targets not based on rank, but on immediate threat and positioning. First, the machine gunner. He was reloading, his assistant feeding a fresh belt. Her single, precious round left the barrel. The gunner slumped over his weapon. In the chaotic noise, his comrades didn't immediately register the source of the shot. They likely believed it was a final, spasmodic shot from the dying Soviet sniper. They continued to fire. But Pavlichenko was no longer there. Using the confusion and the literal smoke from the German fusillade as cover, she executed the second, even more critical phase of her plan. She scrambled, not away from the Germans, but in a wide, low arc toward their flank. She moved with a speed born of pure adrenaline, closing the distance to under 150 meters. The Germans, still focused on the decoy position, had left their own flanks vulnerable. Reaching a new pile of rubble, she did the unthinkable. She picked up a discarded Soviet PPSH-41 submachine gun from beside a fallen soldier, a weapon she had noted earlier during her infiltration. It was heavy, unfamiliar in her sniper's hands, but it had a full 71-round drum magazine. She was no longer a sniper with one bullet. She was now an avenging angel with a hail of 7.62 mm Tokarev rounds at her disposal. She opened fire from this new, unexpected angle. The surprise was total. The German squad, caught in the open and now taking fire from a location they believed was secure, panicked. Pavlichenko's sustained burst cut down 3 men where they stood. The others broke and ran, scrambling for cover away from this new threat, which they could not immediately locate. In their disorganized retreat, they ran directly into the pre-sighted kill zone of the nearby Soviet machine gun nest that had earlier helped Kutsenko. The Soviet gunners, seeing the fleeing Germans, opened up with devastating effect. The valley fell silent once more, the echoes of battle replaced by an eerie, ringing quiet. Smoke drifted from the shattered rocks that had held her decoy. When Soviet reinforcements finally secured the area an hour later, they found a scene that told a confusing story. At the decoy position, they found Lyudmila Pavlichenko's destroyed helmet and bullet-riddled rifle. For a terrible moment, they believed she had been killed. Then, she emerged from the gathering twilight, weary, coated in grime and snow, carrying the PPSH-41. The after-action report, pieced together from her testimony and the battlefield evidence, was staggering. The initial German reconnaissance patrol had been wiped out. The counter-sniper team was eliminated. In total, 12 German soldiers lay dead in the valley. All were attributed to Pavlichenko's actions, 1 to her final sniper round, 3 to her captured submachine gun, and the remaining 8 to the devastating crossfire she had orchestrated by luring them into the open for the Soviet machine gunners. She had turned certain capture or death into a stunning tactical victory, using nothing but ingenuity, profound courage, and a single bullet to start the chain of events. The story of her dummy sniper trick spread like wildfire through the ranks of the Red Army, becoming a legend of the Sevastopol defense. It was a testament not just to sharpshooting skill, but to psychological warfare, audacity, and the unbreakable will to survive and fight on. For her actions throughout the siege, which would see her final confirmed tally reach 309 enemy personnel eliminated, Lyudmila Pavlichenko would be awarded the Soviet Union's highest military honor, the title Hero of the Soviet Union, along with the Order of Lenin. She survived the war, though wounded by mortar fire in June 1942, and became a famous historical figure. But this specific incident in October 1942 stands apart. It showcases not the methodical hunter, but the desperate, brilliant tactician who, when stripped of all conventional means, waged war with her mind and won.